Order the September 12th, 2023 meeting of the Springville Planning Commission. First on our agenda today is an approval of the agenda. Do we have any motions for the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved. Included in your packet are the minutes from August 22nd, 2023. Are there any adjustments to the meeting minutes or corrections that have not already been submitted to staff? I did notice that you put the time marks in there. That's really helpful. Thanks.
You want a motion on the minutes?
Yeah, I'm ready for one if you're ready to give one.
Sure.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Approve minutes.
Seconded?
All in favor of approving the minutes as presented?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. We have no items on our consent agenda tonight, so we'll move to the administrative session, which is a commercial site plan approval for CCA Springville Mixed Use, which is a mixed-use development on the former Allensbrook of Main Street located in the MSSG Main Street South Gateway Zone, corner of Main Street and 4 South. And we have a presentation tonight, I assume from Director Yost, who is taking a short leave. So we will pause for just a moment.
Hold on a second, my monitor's not on. There we go. Chair, commission members, thank you. It's been a long time coming to present this site plan approval. This, by standard procedure, would normally be an item that appears just on our consent agenda, but based on its importance and obvious interest, we saved you the trouble of moving it off the consent agenda and put it on the administrative agenda. We first adopted the Main Street South Gateway Zone about 3 years ago. I think it was the first week of September of 2020. A lot has changed in that time, and we're a lot farther away from that approval than we initially thought we might be to get to this point. And we are still hoping that we see a project move forward on this project. This is the Allens block, or as I call it, Block 5. The name of the application is the CCA Springville Mixed Use project. This is an aerial image of the current property with the one remaining house at 86 West, and then the former Allen's grocery store that became the video shop, and then the newer early 80s Allen's grocery store, and the former drive-through. So
Now
it's
a food truck parking lot.
yes, now a food truck.
Community food lot.
Yes, cars, used car lot, any number of beneficial uses.
Driver's ed.
This is the site plan for the proposed project in the same orientation as the site plan on the slide before. North up. On the right side is the mixed-use portion of the project that will front Main Street in buildings A and B, with a courtyard or plaza between the two buildings at about 350 South Main.
Josh, has any of this changed since the original presentation?
Not substantially,
Okay.
and I won't spend a lot of time going through it, just a quick review. That plaza flows through a mid-block walkway to the townhomes to the west, the front 100 West. And then we have some elevations here for you. They've been refined and evolved since the original elevations you saw when we adopted the zone. They've improved significantly, and the applicant has spent considerable time addressing the comments regarding architectural design standards, as well as civil and other civil engineering design elements of the site. These are the two elevations that will front Main Street, the south building on the top and the north building on the bottom. On the south building, that first floor will extend in front of the 4-story section of the building by about 20 to 25 feet. And then that taller portion of the building extends upward after that first floor step back. On the north side, that first building in the red brick on the left is 3 stories at the sidewalk, and then the building steps back to the north of that to those additional multifamily units. So rear elevation of those 2 buildings, again, south on the top, north on the bottom. This is the elevation facing south onto 400 South. You can see here the 30-foot step back at this location from the first floor to the second floor. These apartment homes all line up, so there is some on the main floor that open out to the rear of the building, and then these units facing 400 South are 2-story walk-ups. Then on the north, directly across from the Pier 49 or the Seniors Hotel, and then the interior courtyard elevations of the south building and the north building.
How many senior rooms are there again? I forgot.
How many?
Senior hotel rooms are there? Or the, what'd you just call them?
Oh, what I meant was that this elevation is on the north side of the block, across the street from the Senior Hotel, the old building on the where
There
Pier
are no
49.
senior rooms.
No,
I know.
Last name senior.
no.
For a while, I know that that was an.
That
Yes,
was a
under-
proposal.
Yeah.
With the
that wasn't
previous-
proposal.
And I thought
Yeah.
that was back, and I thought, oh man, I didn't remember that.
No, there. This is all
Yeah.
right.
Beautiful.
This is all market rate for rent product. And then the ground floor,
The whole thing is for rent, even
correct.
so nothing's going to be.
Nothing is a for sale product, no. On the main floor, this is where you also see the commercial elements of the project from 4 South to 300 South. There's roughly 10,000 square feet of commercial, retail, restaurant space programmed in those areas.
If they chose to, could they at some point change from a rental to a owner-occupied structure?
They could, by going through a condominiumization process. Sometimes there are building elements of that. Sometimes that's not something I'm really familiar with, condominiumizing an existing building, but it is done. And it goes the other way as well. The Art City apartments on 900 North were built condominiumized, and they actually abandoned that condo plat into into just a single building under single ownership in the last couple of years.
So Josh, you said how many square feet the real retail will be. Do we know how many businesses different businesses, or?
We don't,
don't.
because it's very divisible. Somebody could take
2 spots?
2,
It'd be
3
like
spots.
Elements down here, right? Elements Design, where they just basically took that whole lower floor.
Correct.
of the- yeah.
Correct.
Based on your square footage.
Right. So it's probably demisable into a space per storefront. So the maximum number of tenants you'd most likely see would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, most likely. But it could range down from there depending on how that space is absorbed.
How much, how did you set up the meters and stuff like that? Are they, because that's a big consideration if they're trying to do separate. are
That'll
they-
all be handled with the building, with how they. I don't know how they're setting that up. I don't know, if it's triple net lease or full service leases, how that's set up. And typically on the apartments, they each have their own utility account for power. So each apartment has their own meter, and usually gas if there is gas in the unit. But water and sewer are of necessity not individually metered in a project like this, even
Are
if
they
it's all-
combined? That's why I ask, because I know from, there's a whole different strategy coming together when you're building a project, whether it's individual condominiums, the sewers have to be done different, and everything else. That's what I'm asking, if that's, are they being done individually, or are they being, is it there a common?
It's a common.
it's a for rent product, so it's not being designed, as far as I know, to be condominiumized. But as is typical in these projects, each of the units has their own electrical service, and if gas is present, has their own gas service.
And their own sewer lateral and things like that?
No, the whole building would be served by
One makes,
unified brown wastewater utilities. Even on the townhomes, again aren't actually fee simple townhomes, so they are actually sewering out to a lateral that runs down the alley and then out to the street. So they're specifically building the townhomes in such a way that they really aren't, they couldn't in the future be made fee simple without some changes.
That's what I was asking.
But they could probably be condominiumized.
Yeah.
I thought the townhomes at one time were going to be sold.
They may have been. That's not the
Did that-
plan.
When did that change? Did I,
Revival Development, since they've been working with the property owner, has never proposed that those be for sale product.
I must have missed that somewhere, because originally I thought that the townhomes would be sold, and then the apartments would be for lease or for rent
Yeah.
situation.
I believe that's what the previous development group that was working with the owner had envisioned for the townhomes on the west side of the block. But based on my memory, and I could go back and check it, but I don't recall that this current proposal has ever included
Okay, I must
for
have
sale
missed that.
product.
Thanks for the clarification.
Is there an advantage either way, or, I mean, what's the approach, for sale or not for sale? Is there, maybe I'm catching up with what you've been doing and thinking.
Well,
What's the city prefer, I guess, is,
the
asking.
city, from a regulatory perspective, that's not something we can regulate. We can't control the form of
Understand
ownership.
that,
I would like to see for sale product in the downtown. I think there's obviously the rental market is good as well, and I don't see any broad major advantages one way or the other. We could look at census data in the city to see what 10-year differences there is between like Outlook, not Outlook, 5 Star, which is condominiumized, and a project like Outlook, which isn't. But generally, we're just happy to see
Yeah.
more
beautiful project.
more
Yeah.
residential in the downtown.
Hey, Josh, one
Mhm.
more thing, and I know we have more important things to get onto. Will you remind me, is the parking all private?
Yes,
Okay.
meaning that it's all on private property.
Yeah, and only for the use of the people that live there.
No, there is for tenants, business tenants, customers, and for residents. So each of the townhomes, if we go back to the site plan, each of the townhomes has a 2-car garage included within each unit and served off of these alleys. And then the
There's no public parking other than for the businesses that are in the.
No, there's no designated public parking here in terms of providing parking for other properties or other uses.
So does each business have so many allotted spots, or is it just that, how do they?
It's not that big, I guess.
That I'm sure there will be provisions for that in the lease agreement, but generally the way we look at it is we look at the total commercial square footage and then the required parking that's generated from that. And I can,
They got a parking reduction
they
based on.
they need a
Dual
parking
use.
reduction.
So that, yeah, that's,
They
We have not
want,
approved that, correct?
they want a parking.
They want a parking reduction.
Because of dual use.
Correct.
If we don't approve a parking reduction, what's the plan?
It probably, project probably goes away. I don't know if there is headroom in the project to accommodate mechanical or structured parking to make up the deficit.
It means more food trucks if it's not a.
Yeah.
That's why I asked the
But
question about retail.
what kind of, I
because-
guess maybe I'm catching up, but what percentage are they asking?
20%, which is the
20%
percentage
reduction.
allowable under the code that planning commission can grant. They're based on our current citywide parking, off-street parking requirements. They have 105 apartments, which would require 2.25 stalls apiece, independent of how many rooms they have. Just, we don't have a per room rate like most places do. It's just a per unit, which would require 236 stalls. With their 20% reduction, they're proposing to provide 169 stalls for a rate of 1.6 per unit. And then there will be, they're providing more retail and restaurant parking than is required by 14. There'd be, as they've currently got the space broken out, 37 retail spaces required. They're providing 39. And 13 restaurant spaces required, and they're providing 25 for a total provided number of 233 compared to a total required of 286 and a quarter. So the 20% reduction brings them down to 229, and again, they're providing 233. So the total parking is right about the same as the required parking for the residential.
I'm a little confused because
Yeah,
it comes
those are
down
different
here,
numbers.
those are different numbers. So
Than
we've
what
got
we-
169 units for the apartments.
169 stalls for the apartments,
Stalls,
correct?
39 for retail,
Correct,
25 for restaurant.
correct.
With total parking of 228.
And the
And then a 20% reduction brings them down to 187. At least that's in our packet
This is the latest
on page 2.
parking tabulation I pulled down out of the project.
It should say total parking of 233.
Instead of 228.
What they're providing is 233.
And it should say
Okay,
186.7.
we're showing 228 on our,
Yeah.
so it's 233.
The 20% reduction gets them to 228. That may have just been an error in the staff report,
Oh, because the 20% reduction shows 187.
right? The 20% reduction is actually off of the 286.
So
Resulting in
what's that
229.
187 figure then? Just ignore it?
I think you just ignore it. I think
So
that,
the total number of
They did
spots
it
then is
20% off
233
20%?
spots.
correct,
With the 20% reduction.
correct,
That is including the reduction.
correct.
Yeah,
So the
that's way
20%
different.
reduction would require 229 spots if we round up, and they're providing 233,
And the original number before the 20% is 289.
286.
286.
And that's for the residential and the
Retail. and
retail.
That's for everything in the
requirement.
mixed use in building A and B. We're not tabulating
No,
the
not the
townhomes in that
townhomes,
number.
no.
So we don't know if the reduction's coming, is it all coming off from retail, or is it coming from both on the reduction?
Well, what they've shown us is that they're currently tabulating it as 1.6 units per apartment at 169 total stalls. So all of the reduction, as they're tabulating it on their application, comes from the residential. But we look at it in terms of just the total parking provided on the site. And especially when we're looking at shared parking between residential and business, that those peaks are pretty off-peak with each other. That we would, I don't anticipate, and this is maybe a question we could ask, don't anticipate that the owners of the project would not allow full utilization of the parking lot after the business hours of the businesses.
So I don't want you to make your presentation. I don't want to get sidetracked here and wait until you get to this point. But 1.6 units per apartment or townhome seems, I just think we were starting with a problem before we even begin, because name me a household that doesn't have more than 2 cars. So where do we park that other 40% of the car?
Well, the townhomes have garages, don't they?
Correct, the townhomes do have two-car garages.
Is that
Two-car
part of
garages,
this?
so we're just
No.
talking about-
But that's not part of
No,
this
that's not
number.
part
We're
of
just
the
talking about the
discussion.
multifamily and
We're
the,
talking the multifamily,
commercial.
but still,
There-
you've got an issue that you don't have enough parking to put
Well-
2 cars per apartment, which probably is what it's going to be.
it may be, we can spend some time talking
But I don't want
about.
to cite, if that's for later
But
on.
No,
but there-
No, I think it's
That's-
good to bring up. When is this conversation gonna occur then? Because
No, this is the conversation.
yeah.
Okay.
for a parking approval?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
site plan
okay.
includes approval of all elements of the
My other
project.
concern too is they're basing on, 1 per 300 square foot space of retail. And who's not to say that that majority of that retail space becomes restaurants? So then you go from 1 to 300 to 1 to 100. I don't know, I just,
Yeah.
it's in such flux that to say, well, yeah, we're gonna have enough parking there, I think we're in trouble before we even
And I
start.
can't tell you that we're gonna have enough parking there.
I know, and I know that's not, but I just
Yeah.
think they're asking for a lot. And then that becomes, if we approve this, then that becomes an area of congestion on the busiest intersection in our city. And I've already got a concern of traffic coming in and out of this project onto 4 South, even onto 3rd South, even onto State Street, let alone starting out with not enough parking, because then that becomes people parking on what is it, First West or,
First West and
I mean, I just,
Third
I see a real problem.
What's the capacity for off-street or on-street parking on 300, 100, where we're not overloading the neighborhood nearby?
Do you mean the absolute geometric capacity?
No, I mean, can you
Is there
park
street
there, or is it
parking?
going to be
There's
no
a significant
parking?
amount of street parking, yes.
Okay.
Half of Main Street, basically from 350 south, is not available for on-street parking due to the protected right-hand turn lane, which is something I'd eventually like to get rid of, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. But 300 North only has 1 drive approach on it in the plan, so all of that 390 plus foot block frontage minus the 22-foot drive approach minus the setbacks from the corners is available for on-street parking at about, we're looking at parallel, about probably 25 feet space. And then on 300 West,
100 West.
sorry, 100 West, the 2 alley entrances are the only curb cuts on that block. So there is a significant amount of available on-street parking, but we don't count that or credit that toward the development. We understand that there may be, and anticipate there may be some demand, and anticipate that as part of a parking management process or parking management function that the Reframing Downtown plan proposes and tells us that we need to do, that we may come to a point eventually that we need to manage that on-street parking to some degree in this area and other areas in downtown.
Is this the townhomes parking, can they not get out from the parking and go down the alleyway?
No, there's a
So the only exit from the main parking is to the north
In the south.
and the south, and
Right.
that's it?
Yeah.
So 4th South is, you're turning straight on to 4th South
4 South and 3rd South.
and 3rd South, okay?
And then you've got, either turning right onto State Street or go on to First West.
Yeah,
And then you have the rest of the Plat A grid as well. If you want to go north
If you
or,
wanna go further down.
but it also looks like it's not tied together between the 2 parking lots
it's
either,
not,
right?
no.
So there's no way, if someone comes in off of 4th South, the only way they can get onto there is to go around the block, come and go west, right?
Say
So
that.
if I'm coming into town, I have to turn and go across First West. I'd make a left-hand turn,
You could at First West or Second
or
West.
whatever else. I have to go somewhere, come around, come down Main Street, turn and go back down Fourth and turn into that park.
No, there's a driveway on the north on 300 South.
Not if I'm trying to get here to the townhomes. On
Oh
this-
no, the
on
townhomes,
Fourth.
you have to enter the townhomes off of 100 West.
No, that these townhomes that it's showing on Fourth South right here.
So
Sorry, I
all
don't
of,
have a way to show
so
you.
all of this parking lot, can you see
And
my
Building
cursor?
B,
All this parking lot is one parking lot.
oh, that's what I was asking.
That's
You
not-
Oh,
can't-
I thought you meant between the townhomes and the parking lot. This
No,
is
no.
just a raised walkway that you drive over.
Oh,
Oh,
I
okay.
thought you meant it was a division, like.
No, no, no.
How are we getting out?
No, this is
No,
this
it-
is all one parking lot with a straight through
gotcha.
aisle.
It's got a heightened walkway
Yeah.
between. Sweet.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, are they taking, like, so if you were to say it's residential and business mixed use, and it's 12 o'clock, who can park? Have they done a study, or are they proposing, are we mandating that? Because if someone was to say, like Rod was talking about, they have an extra car, they put it in the parking lot, no one has a .6 car, so they're taking the spot, they leave their car there all day, they go to work, that parking stall is gone for the entire time. Is there like a time frame that they're saying you have to move? All these cars have to be, they're only like a 2-hour parking limit or anything like that?
That will be totally within the purview of the property owner to manage the parking on their site.
So we can't mandate that?
No.
Why not?
Because it's private property.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, they're asking us to approve a 20% reduction in parking. We can say, yeah, we're gonna reduce the parking, but you're gonna have to somehow control,
You're gonna have to police the parking.
you're gonna have to, well, I'm just saying, it's, what's going on in Provo with the people hauling cars off and all that kind of stuff, because there are only so many parking stalls that are there. It becomes a part of the city's issue. I mean, that seems to me like a one way to try to manage the parking stalls is to say, because if somebody comes in there with 4 cars in an apartment, unless somebody's managing that, you've got a lot less parking, and that would be the only thing I would consider be some kind of a concession to say, if we're gonna take a 20% reduction from the state standard, then we need to have some active plan. How are you gonna deal with that? Because the state standards the standards come as a reason, not just something somebody wanted, so
My own-
obviously.
They're actually probably more in that realm.
No. Well, if you've ever been over to Provo right now, yeah, that's the big challenge.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the scientific rationale behind the off-street parking requirements isn't as technical and defensible as it may appear.
Yeah,
overall.
I know I've done projects and asked for those same kind of concessions. All I'm trying to say is that we do have some ability, or the owners have some ability. It's not like it's a locked out thing, right? They could say, well, we're gonna reserve these as residential parking stalls.
Yes, and I
we're
think-
going to do that.
Yes. This, I think, is very clear that you can require them to provide 169 stalls of residential parking. And that's what they're asking for. But I don't think we can tell them
I want
to.
to limit the residential parking, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because that was the one that's gonna kill you.
I don't think we have.
If you're gonna limit that and say, okay, you got 169 spots for residential, and you're gonna post it, then what you're saying is anybody else that comes in there to use, retail or restaurant parking, are those gonna be posted, those 169, that they're reserved for parking only of residents?
I don't know how they would manage that, but we would somehow, as we go into implementation, make sure that that was maintained.
And then my other question is, and this is the thing that I worry about, is if I were a neighbor living along there, and I've lived for years and years and had my street, a quiet street, and now all of a sudden, somebody, has allowed this project to go forward, and now I've got 50 cars parking in front of my home up and down the street, I'd be tremendously disappointed.
and that's something the city should engage in actively to manage that. From a professional parking management perspective, if that becomes an issue, then the city controls that on-street parking and should.
But I think
Sounds
that's,
like you
that's
have to
Commissioner
this
Ralph's,
Right.
Commissioner Ralph. That's Ralph's point, I think. He's saying, let's address this before we get to the point where we say, oh, wow, this is a problem. Now let's address it. Let's address it before we approve things. And if it says, you know, and we say, if you guys can't manage this, then, you know, that
I
you're not
understand.
getting the parking reduction.
I understand the cost logistics of the project. It gets to a point where, you know, it's just not cost effective. But in an ideal world, if we're really looking at it in an ideal world, this whole project should be self-contained with their own parking spaces, whether it be
Yeah.
underground, whether it be a mechanical lifted parking, you know, whatever it be. But this whole project, we shouldn't put cars out on the street and force people to park out on the street and make it, you know, build a project where there's no parking available. And I realize if you start, you know, putting an underground parking lot in it, or if you put a mechanical, you know, structure in to park, you know, whether it be a Ferris wheel type or whatever it is, then the project is null and void. It just doesn't pay for itself.
But we
So-
can't stop, we can't go back.
No.
Once you've spent millions of dollars and the project's there, we can't go back and say, "God, that wasn't a very good thing," because we're done.
No, but they're coming to us again
Yeah.
now, and they're asking for a 20%.
I mean, I agree, that's why I'm concerned about the reduction
So-
myself too, so.
So the project, if we say, no, we're not gonna give the 20% reduction, then it's done.
Food Truck Alley. yeah.
Well, that's what they're saying, that may be what they say, I don't know, I haven't heard someone say it's this or nothing, but
Well, I
I'm,
thought Josh basically said it a few minutes ago.
I think what's been communicated to me is, again, what I've heard from the proponent of the development, and is that the margins
well,
don't support, wouldn't support that.
but we don't want an albatross at the main intersection of where we're at and
No.
creating a bigger problem.
You don't want an albatross, but you certainly don't wanna create a bigger problem.
I agree.
Have we done a similar reduction to any other projects that would be comparable to this one? Or can you point to any in other areas that would be similar to where you can say this is how it's worked out?
Not in Springville, no.
Okay.
How about outside of Springville? Because Ralph was talking about Provo and saying they're running into issues now with the,
And I can speak to Provo pretty significantly because I ran the strategic parking plan process in Provo. And briefly, the difference between perception and actual quantifiable reality in Provo is pretty significant. But it comes down to a discussion of values and other elements, just other than whether the project gets built or not, as to the pluses and minuses of providing abundant off-street parking. And Provo's made us a very intentional policy decision that they are more interested in pursuing a vibrant urban center and one that is able to be supported without requiring everyone to build a ton of parking. And then they're figuring out slowly, not quickly implementing the recommendations in that strategic plan. But they've made the choice and weighed the pros and cons of what this downtown or what the Joaquin area or other areas would look like with higher parking requirements and what it would look like, with the pluses and minuses, and made that decision so it really is a policy decision, and I think it may be helpful for us.
but what would have been the results of these decisions? Has it caught, and again, I don't understand, Ralph was talking about there's problems with.
They've gone from a handful of residential units in the downtown area in 2012 to hundreds of residential
Yeah,
units in
but
the downtown.
what are the results of the parking issues?
They haven't increased significantly, at least up to the point where I left 4 years ago.
They have not,
No.
as of 4 years ago, but a lot has
Right.
happened in 4 years.
Oh, but if you go up University Avenue, and if I'm a business owner on University Avenue, and I've got a shop, right, and I'm wanting 20 customers you know, an hour to make my business viable, because everybody in here has to be viable, right? But if I'm looking for 20 customers that I need in an hour, and I have one parking stall on University Avenue, it doesn't work. And so what happens is people won't park. I don't go there. I've been there. I've been tried to be there. You try to park, you drive around the block, you can park around the block. Eventually, it becomes an economic, you know, problem.
There are also lots of people in Provo that are willing to park like on Center.
Or at Smith's.
Well, but like
and
Rod
then-
said,
and
if
then
you're
they
parking
walk
on First
around
East,
the-
if you're having to park on First East to walk to University Avenue to shop, it's not anyway, in my opinion.
Do
I
that.
The
I realize they do it.
It may be inconvenient for some people, and depending on how you use and move about the city, but the success of the tenants in those locations and the amount of traffic and customer base that's there shows us that somehow the demand for and the quality of the destination is drawing the people, and that the parking in the area is sufficient. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parking garages now, all within a 3-block
Right,
radius.
but we don't have anything
We
like
have
that.
no
That's what
parking.
I'm
No,
trying to say.
we don't, but it's really infeasible for us to,
Came after.
But we do have.
not necessarily.
Parking
most
on
part, it
Second
has.
South.
Mhm.
You know, we have the
We do.
We do.
diagonal parking on Second South on both sides of the street. That's only, you know, a block
Right.
walk. It's not.
And we can't ignore it, but we're going to have a substantial issue in building out our downtown if we don't find a way to make accommodations in required off-street parking. But we do need to focus on it strategically as in terms of the whole downtown and managing that on-street supply and determining, studying if there is additional off-street supply that needs to be provided. And that's one of the key recommendations in the Reframing Downtown plan, is that we need to be more holistic and strategic about that, more than we have been up to this
As well
point.
as providing things, the amenities that make it more feasible to park a little bit further and walk,
Right.
such as
Well-
the covered walkways.
Or even just an
bike
interesting walk.
parking.
An interesting
Yeah.
walk.
Yeah.
But I
Shade.
think that, oh, sorry.
Go for it.
Oh, I was just saying, I think that's part of why in Provo downtown, people are willing to walk, you know, a block or two, because there are things along the way, you know, there's music playing and, you know, different things so it feels alive. It feels like it's an interesting walk. You don't mind going around.
As long
Josh?
as you have
Because
Mike?
You know, one of the problems that I have is, we're talking about people on First West suddenly having cars parked on the other side. If you've been on First West and look, and if you want to talk about albatrosses, look at what they have right now. They have a blank wall, and it's pretty ugly, which is Allen's building. Now, I would a lot rather have those townhomes across the street from me, even if I do have to have cars parked in front of them. I mean, you talk about an albatross. We've got an albatross right now. It's Allen's. We need to reframe downtown. And this is the way we do it. And sometimes you have to make some accommodations.
But I think we have to look at the goal of reframing downtown is to make it economically viable for everybody, right? So if I'm a business owner and I can't get parking, then I'm not gonna be successful.
The
for my
business owners
parking.
have more parking. The problem is not 1.6 is for the apartments.
But yeah, I'm just saying, we're talking about putting residential people parking right uptown where all the businesses are. That's a different model than we've had, you know, and that's the challenge. You know, like if you go over to Provo with the apartments, you know, the Zions Bank building, some of the others, you know, the apartments, they have their own underground parking. They have their own section. You can't go in there, you can't park if you're not part of that. You know, that's a dedicated, viable, it was a project that's successful, made money, did all those kinds of things. So I don't know that we're really in a situation where we say, well, you got it, this is what you want, you gotta try to do something with Allen's Block. I mean, Allen's Block's been there a long time, you know. But I'm just saying that I think we have to be careful to not put something in there that causes big trouble and big problems, because once it's there, you can't change it.
Of course.
We're talking about 75 units of residential that we're finding spots for in this lot, right?
105,
105?
correct.
Where's the 105?
Because we got,
It says 75.
53 are one bedroom and 22 are two bedrooms. So there's something that's not quite
In,
kosher.
It's only
That's 75. It's in the packet, so I'm just reading
Oh,
the packet.
No,
Yeah.
sorry, I did the math wrong. That's total units.
Totally.
There are 30 townhomes.
Okay, so
Okay,
the
but we don't
Townhomes
know
have their
about
own
the
parking.
So the
townhomes.
the,
townhomes
the
have their own
separate
parking,
townhomes,
though.
not the,
So we
because
Right.
we don't
the
need to worry
site
about
plan
them.
shows townhomes
Right.
Unless
in
they
the
have three
south
cars.
building.
Josh, help us on the numbers. Let's repeat those. So how many apartment buildings would be in this parking?
75,
75.
correct.
75.
And how many stalls are they proposing under the reduction?
169.
169, so that is
The
more.
1.60, actually, that math is wrong because I used the 105 as as the denominator when it should be 75 as the denominator.
So there's
There's at least two stalls per
Right.
unit.
So
which
that's
Small
should be sufficient,
change.
really.
right.
for each apartment.
So it's
Yeah.
actually
I'm not concerned about it if.
75,
Yeah.
or sorry, 169 divided by 75. So it's
So it's 2.25 units, just like it's showing here.
So start with 233, because that's the number of parking we have, correct?
that's the number of
Spaces,
correct.
okay? So if we take off the 75 times 1.6, is that what we're,
No, it's
No.
2.25.
Forget the 1.6.
okay?
The 1.6 is erroneous.
We have,
Do we know in Provo?
Well, let's
I-
follow
I-
let's follow Ann's math
Let's
first.
get the
Yes.
the
Yes.
figures.
I'd like
Yeah,
to
get the figures,
finish
so
the
we're all
math
on the same
piece,
page.
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Because all this is wrong, right?
So we've got,
This is all
we've got 75 apartments.
Yes.
Two and a quarter units per apartment.
And that's where I'm just looking at the table, the latest table from the developer, and they're telling me that 236.25 stalls are required. And I think what they've done is actually included in the requirement the number of townhomes. And this is where having a clearer table like I've requested may have been a little more helpful. I'm sorry to be digging through the math when we're up here and it should have been clear. If there are indeed 169, as they're showing, parking stalls for the
For the 75 units.
75 units, then we're
puts us
at
2.25 units.
2.25, but we need to check that because this has been,
So I don't think a decision, I don't know,
I mean, I'm
Madam Chairperson,
I can come
what
back
you
to you
think, but I
and
don't think a
bring you a
decision
tidy
could be
table.
made on this tonight without clear numbers that are in
We
writing.
need to know which numbers we're approving for this.
And we can look at the site plan and look at that, but I'm more than happy to go back and bring you a tidy table with the parking on it.
Will you include the ADA, how many of those stalls are ADA and all that kind of stuff too?
And that's required by state law, the number of those can't be
Building
reduced,
code,
right?
yeah.
Right, I understand the building code, but I mean,
It
those,
would be
that's
nice
still,
Of these 236, how many
taken out
are
from there?
ADA, how much are taken from there?
And this
Absolutely.
might be premature, but I don't know if you could ask the developers, what's their idea? Are they going to mark apartment number 32 gets 2 stalls and retail gets, and it's gonna be marked retail only parking, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Because that would help me make a
And I'm
better
sure they're
decision.
gonna do that.
Well, let's make sure,
But we'd like to have it
yeah.
Clarified.
brought out and clarified.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll ask them to provide as much information on their management strategy
Okay.
plans.
because they're asking us for something that's additional. They're asking us to approve something that's not, I mean, if they had the numbers, then it wouldn't be any discussion for parking, right?
Right, and that's what the code has asked them to do. I pulled this up in
So you're asking for a code variation, then we ought to,
So I think what these.
The code just asks them to clearly demonstrate that the required number of stalls is unnecessary and that the amount of stalls they are providing is adequate, and we can go back and ask for additional information from them so you have better information to base your decision on, because that's really the only criteria that the code provides you to make that decision.
Because
Okay.
if I'm reading through this, and that 2.25 units for 75 apartments is 169, then if you add everything else up, their total is 228. Less the 20% brings them down, they're wanting 180, they're wanting us to approve the project with 187 parking stalls.
Right.
That's different numbers than I have, and different people wrote the staff report. I didn't write the staff report,
fine.
so that's probably why
Let me
I should have
just take
checked
the
it.
apartments. Let me just take the apartments. At 169 stalls per apartment, we reached the conclusion that was 2.25.
Right, if those actually
If
exist.
that actually exists.
Correct.
Then they're asking for a 20% reduction off of that.
That's not what I have on my spreadsheet from them.
Right.
Okay,
let's
so
get
let's
some
get a
That's the way
clarification.
I read it on here, so yeah,
Okay.
let's.
Thank
They
you.
are telling me their reduction takes them from 286 to 229. So we need to rectify
Okay,
the difference.
all right.
Is there any additional information that we'd like clarified or brought to the commission when this comes back? So we just gather up all the data points that need to be addressed. before
I
we
have
do
something.
this.
I was curious, we talked about the active transportation plan, modifications to Main Street.
Yes.
How does that affect this project, and is that being incorporated? Is that, we're talking about bike lanes, and tell us how that's being incorporated.
The project is entitled to move forward under the current code and the current street standards. We're working with the developer to determine what is the most feasible way forward, whether that is to do minimal work on the existing right-of-way features, the sidewalk, the curb and gutter, the trees, and then wait for the UDOT project to come and redo the street, or if there is an ability to come in and do one block differently. It's probably less likely to be that, both because of the immediate cost that would have to be borne to the project and because of the incongruity it would create on Main Street with
That would make a mess, yeah.
with one block being substantially different than the preceding block. But we're actually looking at, as part of the reframing downtown plan, in evaluating the streetscape for all 4 block faces and taking those essentially as a pilot project for what we'd recommend for the entirety of the downtown. And that's much more likely to happen, and we're working with the developer on that, but it's very much a negotiation because they are vested under the current standards, which means they could develop based on our current standards, which are just the standard.
So is it gonna eventually take out more street parking with that? I guess that's my base question.
On Main Street, no. On First West and 300 South, it could potentially, depending on the configuration of bulb outs at the corners.
I mean, generally speaking, though, you know the plans, both of them, are they conflicting? Are we gonna lose more parking on First West if the plan goes forward like it's proposed?
Well, that's really where it's a difficult question to answer because currently the streetscape standards aren't part of the reframing downtown plan aside from the Main Street section. The rest of the streetscape standards are an additional task that we've tasked that project with, or that consultant with, that will come after the adoption of the plan. And so right now, the concept drawings that we have may remove a couple stalls because of bulb outs at the corners to reduce the crossing distances at those intersections. But it doesn't wholesale remove on-street parking on any of those streets.
So do you feel like they're inconsistent with each other, or are they gonna be in conflict as far as parking goes?
Between
This project we're talking about and the active transportation plan, they seem to be kind of a little bit You know, they're going parallel, I understand, and these guys are ahead.
Right.
So they were saying, well, you actually don't have to do anything yet because it's not there, but this is like a major corner of what we're talking about, so.
No, I don't think
I think
there's
that's
any-
what they ought to, if you asked what are there other items, that's what we probably ought to say, is what are you going to do about the train that's coming with the active transportation plan? If they just say, well, we're grandfathered in, we're not doing anything, then that's probably what we need to know.
Is there any additional questions, or do we have a motion to continue this item?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We should probably verbalize
I'll
the
make a
conditions
motion
of that
to continue
to a future date, or do you have a date certain?
to a future date that Josh is prepared for? Is that,
That work?
meaning he has the correct numbers, not that you're not prepared?
Yeah.
And still I'll
Okay.
second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that item is continued. We'll move to the legislative session, which has a public hearing. This is a Springville Community Development seeking a recommendation to adopt reframing downtown, which is the Downtown Main Street Plan. And again, with Director Yost.
Thank you. And again, I apologize for not going through and making sure all those numbers correlated. We spent a lot of time on that, and I thought we were there. This isn't the place where you want to run into arithmetic issues. Something important like parking. So reframing downtown, changing gears. It has 4 kind of what is it statements. It's intended to overall guide future growth in the downtown to help us preserve Springville's cultural identity, which we spent a lot of time with in the public engagement. It strategizes economic resilience, like Commissioner Calder mentioned, and then it really strives to take downtown and Main Street specifically from a downtown thoroughfare that's primarily a place people travel through, and to make it a vibrant place where people come to. The project started in May of 22, and we had essentially a draft final report in June. We had a number of stakeholder meetings, larger public meetings, and then we just concluded a series over the past month of 2 public meetings for the general public, and had a couple dozen people attend those meetings, and had really positive discussion, both with citizens and property owners, business owners, and residents in the area. The public engagement process really yielded 3 themes. The first was that the visual character of downtown is important, and that encompasses historic preservation, the sense of place, and a sense that it's comfortable and safe and welcome. The next is art, and the posters that are shown here, again, kind of break art out into 3 elements: that it is part of our identity as a sense of the place itself, that it also is the very literal meaning of we need art in downtown, but it's also events and experiences, so it's programmatic. And then food was the third one, which surprised us a little bit, and those 2 really are: food as an experience, that people seek experiences as they come downtown and are looking for unique, local, and diverse food offerings, and that food also constitutes a part of our health and wellness as a city, and that having food downtown, more than just restaurants, but events, programs, opportunities for local food, such as the farmers market, and other opportunities we'll look at later, forms a big part of what food can be for our downtown. The recommendations in the plan are grouped into 4 categories. The first is 2 not through, which we've talked about briefly. The second is an intact downtown, which is we need all the pieces here, both physically and programmatically, that make downtown a place that people want to be. and that will be active throughout the majority of the day. Third is that we need to build on our civic assets. The city's invested a tremendous amount of money and time into the civic assets in the downtown, and we need to continue to build on that investment. And then fourth, leaning into our identity as Art City in the downtown. And what I'm going to do now is jump over to the actual plan document and walk through those recommendations one sheet at a time, because these are really the crux of the plan, what we're going to do part of the plan. So this starts on page 50, which is the beginning of the recommendations section, and just essentially lays out for us that on each spread for each recommendation, there is a title of the priority, a listing of the actions, and then any design recommendations that may be pertinent to that. And then in the next section, the implementation plan, there is a detailed table showing each plan, each strategy, each action item, and the time frame, a very rough order of magnitude, meaning $1, $2, or $3 signs of cost, and then some assignments of responsibility for those.
Can you zoom that up a little bit, or is that,
Which piece would you like to see?
I don't know, maybe one page at a time, or I don't know how to.
These are just example pages. If I come to the next page, I can zoom into these individually.
Okay, then no problem.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's.
I've got some 3.25 glasses.
I'm running 3.0s, but hey,
I think you need to
There we
pull
go.
out
So this is the
magnifying-
overall.
I want to reach up and do this.
This
you
is
know.
the overall to not through page. And the first recommendation is that we need to improve east-west pedestrian connections, primarily outside of the core, between 4th South and 8th South, and between 4th North and, between Center Street and 400 North. We're actually really lucky that we have pedestrian crossings at each block between Center Street and 400 South. That's not easy to do, especially on a state facility like we have here. But we have those. We need to improve them, make them safer, investigate what type of signalization or improvements need to be done to those to make those more comfortable and more welcoming and safe. But we really need to work to the north, because right now we have a light at Center Street, and we have a light at 400 North, and then we have another light at 900 North. So once you get out north of Center Street, there's not a lot of opportunities for crossing the street. And we had earlier this year a tragic, but fortunately good resolution with an auto pedestrian accident at 200 North that nearly claimed the life of a toddler. So providing additional pedestrian facilities in those intermediate blocks is a key element of the plan. And then number 2 is to connect to Hobble Creek. We have this amazing natural amenity in our downtown that we've generally kind of stuck behind concrete walls and buildings and under streets and kind of put it out of mind instead of capitalizing on it as an amenity. And it's really a key part of our history of the city. Springville was originally called Hobble Creek. And the amenity that we have there has a lot of value, both for providing atmosphere and access to nature, but also as a transportation corridor through the downtown. The third is multimodal infrastructure, basically providing facilities and making it easier for people to move about in travel modes other than just the single automobile. That's buses, cars, and trucks, obviously, but people riding bikes, scooters, people walking, to make sure that it's safe and comfortable for people, independent of what travel mode they choose. And we know from studies and case studies and experience across the country for centuries, really, that the places that are most accessible and most comfortable for multiple modes of transportation, that contributes significantly to the vibrancy and the economic vitality of the place. This is that design recommendation, calling out that we need to evaluate additional crossings of Main Street. Then the parking district, this is really, it's one paragraph, but it really is a doorway into a massive potential undertaking. As it says in the last sentence here, that a parking district plan would include a full analysis and recommendations for how to locate and manage parking at the municipal level. And that's not something we've done in Springville before, but it's something as we grow and want to be able to continue to facilitate development like the Allens Block, we need to be more strategic about that. So we both need to provide places for people to park conveniently, excuse me, and make sure that it is accessible and well managed. Because for many people, accessing a downtown is both the first and last experience they have with visiting downtown. And it's a key element of how they feel about that visit and whether they're going to make that visit again. Next is festival streets. And this is essentially saying we should look at Center Street and 200 South between 100 East and 100 West and see how those streets could be configured to serve a more multi-purpose role. And each context is obviously going to be different. On Center Street, we have the considerations of emergency operations access in and out of our fire station to be careful and plan around as we look at Center Street. And then 200 South from 100 West to 100 East is our most mixed-use side street or cross street, and already is unique in the way that it's configured to handle the median parking. So the plan recommends that we strategically look at those and see what type of programming, what type of design would be best there. The number 6, which really has the most fleshed out designs, specific design recommendation, is physical improvements to Main Street. And that, in short, gets us wider sidewalks, renewed furnishings, but also a separated bike facility, as well as better pedestrian amenities along Main Street and crossing Main Street.
In order to do those widened sidewalks and other things that we're hoping for here, is that looking at a reduction of the on-street parking at
No.
Main Street, or how does that work?
No, there is so much room on Main Street that everything you see on this map is accommodated within the 132-foot right-of-way.
So where's the parking?
This is the on-street parking here. There's two travel lanes.
Two travel lanes,
Yes.
parallel parking.
Center turn lane, parallel parking, and then the protected bike lane and the sidewalks.
What's the
Do you
orange?
really want,
The orange is just multi-use?
The orange is just calling out different zones so it's legible. The
I see people dining, so
it may be used for amenities. That's really just illustrative. We're probably more likely to see the on-street or the sidewalk dining be directly adjacent to the building than to be across the sidewalk. But just showing that we have 8 foot of clear sidewalk area, we have 11.5 feet of amenity zone essentially, and then an 8.5 foot, or sorry, a 6.5 foot bike lane.
there's an 11-foot amenity zone?
11.5 foot amenity zone, yeah. So from the edge of the bike lane to the buildings, you have 19.5 feet. You almost have 20 feet.
So if I was to look at Main Street right now, just so I understand, so where the Napa Auto Parts store is, Brian's,
Yep.
is it there on the orange where that lady's walking? Is it back 8 feet? Where is it?
Where is the
Where is it now? Where is that now on that? Is it at the blue?
Where is
it
the face of the building?
The front of the building.
Do
Front of the
you mean-
building's at the edge of the right of way.
Okay, to right there, and
Yes.
then the pizza place on the other side is just the same opposite.
Exactly the same.
Wow.
Correct. So this all fits in with the existing right of way.
Just kind of repurposing the space
Right.
that's already
Yeah,
existing
it's
between
great.
curb and
Right.
building front. Okay.
The intent really is to get to a more to a balance that is better for a downtown place between the amount of space and convenience given to the vehicle, to the cars and trucks, as a balancing that against the the people that we really want here. Cars and trucks don't spend money, but they do need to bring people here to spend money. But we want it to be a nice place once people are here. And right now, it's not necessarily a place, especially as you get closer to Fourth South, and the Allens Block developer is very concerned about this, that, you know, our people aren't going to sit out on the sidewalk and eat dinner here as trucks break to hit the Fourth South light and people are queuing across 6 lanes of traffic at an intersection or 7 lanes of traffic. So making it more hospitable and comfortable is a big element of this plan. The great thing is we know that we can reduce lane width, we can reduce speed, but not significantly reduce the vehicle throughput in the area. And that really comes from the arithmetic of, if you take the 8 blocks in total and you drive a slower speed but you stop less, you can actually still move the same amount of cars that if you are driving faster and you're having to stop more for the lights, for crossings. And as people slow down, the gaps between vehicles, the time between vehicles is increased, providing additional opportunity for people in vehicles and pedestrians to move throughout the space. So it's beneficial, and in terms of what we want to create downtown, is really a key project in turning our downtown from a highway back into a place.
So that includes some sort of timing study with UDOT in order to have those lights timed better to keep traffic just a continual flow, stop, rather than you're stopping here, you're stopping here, you're stopping here.
Right, and as people slow down, so it is a light timing issue, a light coordination issue, and it also is just the reality that as people drive slower, your 200-foot gap between cars or your 50-foot gap between cars is a lot longer at 20 miles an hour than it is at 35 miles an hour. And right now, downtown is signed for 30, but I put my cruise control on at 30 and play the game of how many people stack up behind me or try to go around me. We don't see 30 miles an hour in Main Street, even in the main core. So we really need to get it down to make it a really great space. The consultant, or the kind of visionary guy we had come out last year and do some work with us on Main Street, said that like 17 or 18 is the ideal speed for a good downtown, that people feel comfortable interacting with cars at that speed.
That's we've got in Center Street and Provo.
Right, Center Street and Provo, which still moves 20,000 plus cars a day, but moves them relatively slowly.
We considered taking the bike lanes off of Main Street and putting a designated street like Provo has on 3rd West and making that just a bike street. I mean, traffic still moves up
Right.
and down that road. It seems like, you know, we've got a lot of traffic on Main Street, and we've got bikes in there and little kids and things. I don't know, it just seems from a safety standpoint to move it off of Main Street would be a little better option. But
No, that makes
that's
a lot of
just
sense.
My personal opinion.
And we've actually done that in the active transportation plan. 200 East and 200 West are both bicycle boulevards, which are like the 200 East Street in Provo or 300 West
Yeah.
Street in Provo, north of Center Street.
Right.
So we're both providing low speed, low volume, very safe, very comfortable facilities, 2 blocks either direction. But also we have the opportunity here to provide a really high quality, high safety facility on Main Street to help revitalize Main Street and provide fill in a gap in the regional active transportation system between Provo and Spanish Fork.
This looks very similar to the idea of Cougar Boulevard. You've got your protected bike lane with a cement barrier between the bike lane and the traffic, which is just park traffic, it looks like right there.
Yeah, the difference here is that the proposal here is a raised bike lane, so it's actually at sidewalk grade, as opposed to a standard protected bike lane like on Cougar Boulevard, where the bike lane is still in the asphalt section, but there is that concrete median dividing the space.
So snow removal, how does that happen on this?
Same way as it happens right now with the sidewalks.
Okay, so let me ask you a quick question. I'm just I'm a numbers guy, but.
Yeah.
So right now, it looks like we got 8 feet of sidewalk, right? Then 11.5 feet of, was that like a boulevard kind of
Just
thing?
amenity zone, additional
Okay,
sidewalk.
And then, so what do we have right now? I mean, I'm stacking up all this and I don't see it where we're at now. I mean, are we cutting down the lanes?
Yes.
So what are the existing lanes widths now, do you know?
13 plus.
So we're cutting 2 feet out of each lane, and then the parking is 9 feet now?
Parking's bigger, more than 9 feet now. All of the extra space is coming out of the lanes on the parking. So we can go, I can pull up the EMAP and we can,
I mean, I'm just trying to add I may get in trouble tonight with the cops, because if I've got my tape strung across Main Street,
no,
I'm
just
not-
put your high vis on. We've done the same thing. You'll be all right.
Also a measuring tool on one of the maps.
yeah, I can get there, that's for sure.
So let's take our best block here. If we zoom in all the
There's
way,
Brian's right there, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll move it over so you can see it. If we go from, and again, or not again, but the parcel lines and the aerial don't necessarily line up to each other, but we're going to go off the parcel lines here. If we take a measurement directly across the street from right-of-way line to right-of-way line, we have 132 feet, which is some even number of rods and chains. I just can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But it's your standard kind of Utah plat.
Can
street.
you put those up in together so we can see the two at a time?
Oh, sure, I can do that.
I mean, that way we can kind of get a scope of like what we're talking about. 'cause-
Right now, we've got about 20 feet from the property line to the top back of curb.
What about that 5 feet of his front building?
Well, there's actually two
Because of
things
the-
going on here. One is that the perspective,
Yeah.
the image comes from the right, and so if you look at it at the bottom, it's probably more like 2 feet. But then if you come over here, these are about that far off too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going more off of what we
Satellite.
know the dimensions of the actual right of way to be than the
Okay.
aerial imagery. That can be confusing. And then the existing parking lane from the face of curb is about 13 feet. And then we'll just do this cumulatively so I don't get error. So we're at 13.7, 17.8, so we're about 4 feet for the bike lane, which is pretty sketchy. If we go from 17 to the middle here, we're about close to 13 feet on that lane to the middle of the stripe. And then to the fog line adjacent to the median, we're now 40. So that's another 12, is that right? 28, 29. So we're total in terms of the two lanes from, again, this is rough, from the middle of the stripe to the stripe is 23 feet, and then to the actual edge of the curb is about 25 feet to the median in this location. And then it's basically mirrored on the opposite side of the street.
So compared to with the one you just showed us,
Yeah.
then,
Let's do that.
okay, so a 9-foot parking stall, you can't open the doors, right? The driver can't get out of their car with a car coming down the road.
They can, yes. And it's,
If they want a convertible or a citable
well, right now your standard
parking stall.
parking stall is 9 to 10 feet
9
wide.
feet, but when you try to get out when there's a car next to you, it's like, yeah,
Yeah, it's tight, for sure.
So you just don't park on Main Street.
no, I'm just trying to understand because I want to make sure, these are the recommendations that the people that we've hired to do this. At a 9-foot on a Main Street, I mean, it's not bad for the passengers to get out, but it's very dangerous for the drivers to get out of the park. If they're parking off the curb by a foot.
No, you can't park off the curb by a foot with
well,
that
but
kind.
most people, when they parallel park,
Yeah.
anyway, I'm not trying to dog the plan.
No, they're
I'm
good
just saying
questions.
this is the reality. We're trying to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound box, seems to me.
We definitely are, and we're trying to make it fit. The nice thing is that it's not just the recommendation of the consultant, but it actually aligns with the Institute of Transportation Engineers and the National Highway Association's recommendations for what they call context-sensitive urban thoroughfares. That these measurements are all within the recommendations that the very conservative engineering guidance provides. Usually we're kind of pushing up against that, but they all concur with this, which is one reason that we've been able to continue to have the discussion with UDOT about these reconfiguration.
So how wide are the new lanes? I don't think you said that.
11.
11 feet.
So they go from 13 to 11.
So the lanes are tighter, the parking's tighter. That's my big concern, and I'm not.
What's the existing distance of the median right now?
The median is probably, and there are some small tweaks to these numbers that we're still, that the consultant's making after we met with Public Works. But it's somewhere between 12 and 14, depending on where you are.
That's good enough.
Yeah. Because it needs to still be able to
So
accommodate.
we're not reducing the size of the median.
No, and that's important because UDOT's standard is to extend the nose of the median out to basically bring those two 10-inch curbs together into a 20-inch curb all the way to the intersection. So we need that space plus the room for the actual turning lane.
So if you zoom out, there's only a certain percentage of that one block is probably maybe 30% of it is the full 10 width, 12 feet then.
Yeah.
That was a full median, yes.
Because you got your turning lanes. And then if you go down one street, we've got a double turn lane with no,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's definitely not
and no parking. so-
continuous. Yeah, there's no parking here south of about here.
Or, yeah, either side.
There actually is there is on-street parking on the east side if it were not for SunPro's 100-foot-long curb cut.
Shortcut, yeah.
But up to the north there is.
Yeah, you can park in front of like the dry cleaners.
Right. Or-
Right, understand. Okay. So you're saying that these are the standards that the powers that be, you're saying this is the way we should go. My big concern, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but my big concern is all I know is when I get out of my car, when I try to get out and I've looked back, and if there's no place to open my door, I'm glad I looked back, but I'm not sure that we're not gonna have a lot of issues with that. You know, we've created a safe party for all these things to happen, but the reality is the parking, it's a very dangerous situation. You can't get out of your car and walk along that, unless you're doing this.
Right. And that's why it all works together to slow the traffic down, and why it's really only appropriate in this context. If it were other higher speed or context, then we'd do something different with the parking. But I can also tell you that there are some minor adjustments kind of pushing things back and forth here, because there is a statement in the standards that cautions against combining multiple minimum widths next to each other. And we've gone through this with UDOT, we've gone through it with staff, and Public Works has signed off on a couple revisions to this, which I could pull up that document with the notes on it and show you. But we now have a unified staff position that we're presenting back to UDOT for their review. And all internal staff, Public Works and Parks and Recreation and Public Safety and Community Development have reviewed it. And there is some variations from this as numbers are pushed around just a little bit.
I'm just grateful there's still gonna be parking there.
One of our preferred, well, not preferred, one of the three alternatives we provided to UDOT for their early review about a year ago was reinstating angled parking, and that was a non-starter. So that's really where we started. But that was a no. We used to have it, but
I think it looks beautiful. It looks real nice. I just some of the conceptual drawings and ideas I just have a concern with. You know, the expanded pedestrian realm. I mean, we don't have a downtown right now for that. I mean, nobody wants to go down to Brian's Napa Auto Part and sit in front of his store. Nobody wants to go to Vaught Hanks and sit in front of the store. So I think I guess we're taking the approach as if we build it, they will come.
It's a multi-pronged approach.
And I don't know, I just think that, you know, we're shrinking down a lot of curbside parking to put some, you know, expanded area for pedestrians and things. And I don't know that our downtown is conducive for that all the way down Main Street.
And this, for clarity, this is just the core from right now. It would be Center Street to 400 North, just those 4 blocks.
Right.
4 South to Center Street, just those 4 blocks. And then potentially down to 7th South as well. Once there's another project in here we'll show you there, and that could extend that way as well.
Yeah.
But beyond that, to the north of Center Street, there is a different section, which is actually this section.
That's just my comment.
Yeah.
I think it's a good comment, but do we have examples where they build it and they will come?
Not really in terms of if you
Program has
just
worked.
build the street and hope for the best. I had a dean in my undergraduate program that said you can't just install old-timey street lights and plant trees and hope and think your downtown's going to turn around.
Yeah.
But we have identified that the physical environment of Main Street is counterproductive to what we want to see in downtown, and that by removing that barrier, that obstacle, it will provide a lot of room for the other strategy we're pursuing in terms of infill development, programming, business attraction and retention, to not be fighting uphill against a street that's really not comfortable. That it's all stuff we have to do together. But if we did one or the other, we'd be missing part of the strategy.
Okay, with all those pieces together then, do we have examples where that has worked?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that would help. Yeah, because we're seasonal.
I'd love to see some that because I do worry that we go say, we're gonna build this wonderful thing and then no new businesses, no new restaurants. And we have all this space there, but, you know, if we have some examples where the same strategy has been implemented and we feel confident that we can do it in our little pocket that's off the freeway, that's, you know, not right on the freeway, can support that. I'd love to see those examples.
Yeah, I'm happy to bring some.
This
Well-
is the sort of project that's going to take a long time for us to implement.
Yeah,
And, like,
this is actually one of those ones that could go either way. UDOT has a lot of money for these type of projects, especially when they include an active transportation component. There is a whole new pool of funding that's called ATIP instead of just Standard Transportation Improvement Fund. It's Active Transportation Improvement Fund. And last year about this time when we had, or actually earlier when we had some of our initial stakeholder meetings, our Region 3 UDOT planner came to the meeting, went outside, came back into the meeting and said, "You got room to do a separated bike lane out there. There's so much room." I said, "Yeah, Eric, there's 132 feet out there." And he said, "You guys need to apply right now because there's funding." I said, "Well, let's finish the plan, and then we'll do that." So UDOT is actually, whereas UDOT has access to funding and is programmatically pushing this direction more so than they ever have. So it actually isn't crazy that we could see a project start to materialize in the next couple of years for Main Street,
So
which
if they're-
in the past would be a much longer shot.
Right, and with the proposed Allen's block, that's going to bring some changes. Do the projects have them coincide with each other, sort of feed into each other, and perhaps create some vibrancy between them because they're doing them at the same time?
In regards to the street improvements and the Allen's block, that's the catch that I really don't think we're going to see the Main Street cross-section change just for the one block of the Allen's block. I think that's probably going to come with the overall project. We'd love to not do something twice or not have to wait for the improvements to come in front of the new development. But the feasibility of re-engineering what we already have there, what they've done from the civil side, and then making the physical changes to the street in just a one block segment and dealing with the physical profile and geometry of the road is really difficult, because we'd essentially have one block where the parking lane was like 9 feet farther out than the previous block, so it creates it's harder to do than it should be. So I don't think the Allens Block development and the street are going to happen concurrently unless the Allens Block development continues to be slow and kind of hangs back waiting for the economic picture to better solidify, and it's a couple years out. There's a very good chance that if it is in that longer time frame that they could happen concurrently. But I think if the Allens Block project moves this year, then we're not likely to see it incorporate these main street changes.
Okay, so not necessarily a combination of they are building it and we are building it and they are coming.
Right. But they're already coming and will hopefully quickly follow on with this element of the plan.
Because one of the things I ask is, like, this is seasonal. We're such a seasonal place. I mean, 6 months out of the year, there's going to be limited amount of ability for people to eat on the sidewalk or, do, you know what I mean? We just have our hot chocolate stands. I'm just saying, we're doing a lot of things to create an environment, which is great, but we're also talking about 6 months out of the year that that's where we're gonna have viability for that.
That may be true, but I'd also push back a little bit that even locally in Provo, you see that throughout the school year, it's very vibrant. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic. There are heaters that restaurants put out, and the sidewalk dining is just one element of it. But the amenitizing, the comfort, those will always be there. And in a lot of northern climates, there's active downtown and active street life throughout the seasons. But that's definitely something to consider as we design to make sure it works. It's not just a summer investment.
Josh, can I make a comment?
Oh, please.
The question has been asked, if we build it, that they'll come, question mark. I think it's Holiday, isn't it, up in Salt Lake, that went in and did, it's not like this necessarily, but they went in and it looked a little like Orem State Street for a period of time. And they went in and they built things such as this, walkways, courtyards, and so on and so forth, and they came. The people, the businesses came.
Right.
And, I was totally impressed with the things that took place there. And the city took an active part in making that happen.
They did.
And, so if you want to see an area where you build it and they do come, go up to Holiday and take a look at what they've done up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good project where they did make some changes. They closed the one leg of the street, made it a plaza, created, took Video Verns out and redeveloped that corner. Now there's a Harmon's across the street and additional residential and commercial happening throughout that kind of
Well,
Prairie Holiday
they even
core.
built a parking lot for the food trucks to come in
Right.
and every day the food trucks can have a place to come park
Yes, right there.
illegally.
Soho Food Park.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, there's the food trucks.
And so that's kind of that rolls into the festival street idea. That was one of the strategies, just up in
Is
the
there a
previous
mixed
page of
use
this.
there of residential and
In Holiday, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, there's residential above the retail, just like we're proposing for the Allens Block.
I just want to say, I look forward to having that extra space there. Because I live close enough that walking downtown is something that I do on a regular basis. And my favorite spot to walk is in front of McAlee's because they have the little seating out there. It doesn't feel so just like barren and exposed like it does, you know, on the previous or southern block to that. And so it's much more of a pleasurable experience to walk over that way. And so I would look forward to having that experience extended through the whole 4-block core.
And also, there's a long journey between this plan and the concepts you see in this plan and an actual project, and a lot of work, a lot of engineering, a lot of evaluation, and coming back to planning commission and council as we turn these recommendations into actual capital projects.
This is the foundation of
This
our
is
plan.
definitely the foundation of it.
So, now, gotcha.
This is, as we move up North Main Street, it turns into more of a parkway because it's less of a active commercial frontage. And then one of the projects that is most exciting to me was a result of a kind of intensive day-long walk tour and discussion and design exercise we did about a year ago with a world-renowned expert on downtowns and walkability and street design. And our engineering team at one table with a representative from UDOT and a couple other people, their assignment was to look at Main Street at 400 South and here at 7th South. And they came up with a concept, which I'd secretly kind of had in my mind that in my wildest dreams we could see something like this. And they came up with it, that we could replace the 5189 interchange with a roundabout. Right now, the road is kind of out here, swings around, comes across the bridge. So this would essentially occupy the middle of that existing interchange and return a lot of land to developable land and create a actual sense of entry as you're coming into the city instead of coming in from 89 and you're along a concrete barrier and you're going very fast and it's kind of inhospitable. It doesn't feel like you're coming into a town. It feels like you're kind of coming into the end of an industrial zone or still on the freeway. And this accomplishes both slowing people down and clearly communicating that, hey, you're coming into Springville now, but it also potentially has the major benefit of reconnecting 7th South across Main Street where we had to close it and where I don't know what kind of crazy person would have tried to bail across that even before it was closed, across the little slip lane into the median by the car lot. And that would provide both a vehicular and a bike pedestrian route all the way from the front runner station at 1600 West all the way up to the east side, crossing Main here, and provide a really viable alternative to 400 South.
Have they considered something for overhead or something for bikes and pedestrians? Because if you're at a roundabout is like pretty risky when you're on a bike. And it's
Yes. This is still definitely conceptual. Something we've actually talked about is the Dutch bikeabout. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those. There's in a couple other Scandinavian cities as well, where there's actually a grade separated pedestrian and bike roundabout on top of the roundabout, kind of out in line with the sidewalk, and you go up on it and then you get off when you arrive on the leg that you want to depart on. And that could be an element of this project. And we really look at it as being a project that makes sense logistically and economically for UDOT as well, because it doesn't require the reconstruction of bridges, and it requires a couple property takes, but it ends up having much more surplus property than the property takes to construct the interchange, and it's cheaper to build and cheaper to maintain in the long run than a new highway bridge type overpass. And especially as the railroads are consolidated, I always get this wrong, and the railroad people glare at me on Facebook. The Provo subdivision or the Utah subdivision, I can't remember. rail line that runs down to Spanish Fork Canyon, that will be consolidated so that the western line moves to the eastern line. And so it will most likely entail a reconstruction of the northerly bridge, which will help accommodate this project if we can get all of those things working together.
Josh,
Yep.
what is the gray? Is that sidewalk or?
These little gray,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just sidewalk. Yeah,
Just
just
make it a bike path. And then-
yeah, sidewalk, bike path.
I love that it allows you to rethink your decisions. Like, right now, you're coming up to the split, like, wait, was it left or was it right? Wait, I don't remember. I'm gonna choose one. Oh, wait, I was wrong. Give me 3 miles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've probably heard me say that. Like when I first got here, I felt like I was like going down a vortex. Like, oh no, okay, I guess I'm going to Mapleton. And until I learned how to get across through Evergreen, I was like totally lost. I only this year figured out that 400 North in Spanish goes all the way to 89, and that's just like opened up the whole part of the South Valley for me. I can get from Ira Allen to the sports park without, yeah.
This is brilliant, though. This is-
So are these pedestrian paths then? Are those all just on grade level for the road? So coming off of 89, you're going to, there's a pedestrian. So if someone's trying to walk down there, is there a street? Is there, since there's no light, how do
It's a cross.
they negotiate that? It's just stop,
Starting blocks there.
starting blocks? Up by your place where they did the.
That's
small-
something we would deal with in design, whether because at an at a roundabout, you should yield to the people on the left, and you should also yield to the pedestrians crossing, like at the temporary installation up on Canyon.
And signal when you're leaving.
Right, but there's a lot of technical stuff to be worked out
Just
here.
curious. So that might be a good way if they were able to elevate that or do
Yeah.
something, because pedestrians go both directions, so then it
Right.
becomes very confusing.
It'd be nice to have an elevated.
There's an, in Provo, going up, was it Seventh East? Anyway, there's a roundabout, there that has, it's right by a school even,
You talking about Center Street and Seventh?
yeah.
Yeah, in front of
Used
the
to be
elementary
Fair
school.
Junior High.
Yeah, it used to be fair.
Yeah, and so there's pedestrian crossings there that there's usually fairly frequented by pedestrians, and
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, so.
Yeah.
it's doable.
The critical piece will be speed, right? Especially
Yeah.
people coming out of 51 and 89.
Yeah.
It's gonna be,
And we're
And if
looking.
we can reduce the speed to 30 there, then that's gonna
Right.
be what
yeah,
really
agreed.
helps.
And-
So people aren't like revving up and, yeah, it says it's 30, but
Right.
you're already going 40 because you're planning to get to 50 before you get to the 50, like.
Right.
those things help.
And it opens up a lot of opportunities to reconsider like the South Main Street and 8 South intersection as well, and figure out how to improve the general mess that's down there.
So Josh, real quick on the build it and they will come. I'm really hoping, I'm so excited about this, and I hope it all works out the way the strategy is outlining it. But I had a question. I mean, are we including public safety in all of this strategy?
Yes.
So we know that we can afford the number of police officers it'll take to, because I think it will, if it works the way it's supposed to, right?
I don't know that we've done the analysis with Chief Haight to say, is your current patrol and anticipated patrol budget or traffic enforcement budget sufficient to handle any anticipated effects from these infrastructure changes? But we've had the general discussion, and they've participated throughout the process to feel comfortable and lend their support to the concept at least.
Are we considering metered parking and stuff like that? Is that what, I guess, and that's my question is, are you talking about parking enforcement? I'm just trying to
I'm
understand.
talking about safety in general, just downtown safety. If we have an increased number of people down here, I hopefully have an increased number of,
Yes, we will
safety
maintain
precautions.
our,
Current level.
yes, we'll maintain our current service level, which is essentially patrol
That's what I
per,
was asking. Yep.
yeah.
Great.
That will increase proportionally with the population. And we will, as each residential unit and any development comes in, they'll actually pay impact fees into the public safety impact fee fund, which essentially pays back the debt on the public safety side of this building, which is basically like 2/3 empty upstairs in anticipation of the growth.
So are we talking about metered parking?
This is all that we're saying right now, is that we need a full analysis and recommendations about how to locate and manage parking. But charging for on-street parking is really one of the key pillars of parking management, so I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future, if demand warrants it, that at least maybe in some spots in downtown, you start with a block and say, hey, this is the most in-demand block and we want to keep the parking turnover, so we charge for it.
Have we considered taking part of the funds that we're talking about and building a parking structure? Because that would be a very viable, thing for downtown. If you could come park in a parking structure, you can walk lots of places.
Right.
Because you mentioned that earlier, and I know it's in here.
Yeah, that's basically all tied up in this item 4, is we have to do that analysis. It's like it says, we need somewhere safe and close by to park the car. And it's not necessarily convenient right now to access the existing restaurants. We have a lot of land here that we could potentially study additional parking facilities on our property. And you'll see a recommendation later that we could explore additional parking facilities in other parts of our property downtown. So that's within the universe of options that we'll explore as we dive into parking. The next section is intact downtown, that starts with entrepreneurial support. We want to support both our property owners and residents downtown, but we also want to provide opportunities for small businesses to really enhance our small town charm and help them locate, start, or expand in Springville. And then 2, is incentivizing high quality infill development, and that could take a wide variety of forms. For example, we own the vacant piece of property between Ginger's Cafe and Funfinity, and by arranging the deal structure and the ownership of that properly, we could essentially reduce the cost of developing there by how we structure the sale of the property to get something high quality that we would want. And that really leads into number 3, which is seriously investigate the city's interest in pursuing community reinvestment areas, which is the current version of the classic redevelopment area, which is that project in Holiday was a redevelopment or a community development area that the city helped with land consolidation, write down, and helped with the development. So we need to evaluate basically the gap between what we want and what the market can bear and the time frame we'd like to see something happen, and decide how and if and how we'd like to participate. 4 is facilitating historic preservation, and that's really recommending that we become more active and engaged in our preservation, that we increase interpretation, that we provide additional support to building owners and helping them access capital and programs to preserve and rehabilitate their buildings, and even, as some people brought up in our public meetings, help them access capital to facilitate the adaptive reuse of the buildings. Just the concept of doing the upgrades to a core building, the core and shell of a building, to accommodate a restaurant where one hasn't been accommodated is, are substantial, and just providing access to expertise and resources for those to facilitate and catalyze those type of changes is really important. And number 5, this is actually something I normally don't get to say, but we've already kind of done this, and you've already kind of done this. That's extend the Main Street South Gateway Zone. The plan recommends that we extend it down to 7th South and up to Center Street. We've now extended the Main Street South Gateway Zone from 4th South to 7th South, essentially, actually to 8th South, to the rear, all the way to the rear of the Jefferson School. And it recommends that we do that to the north, and that will really reduce the barriers to development that a number of the provisions of our existing zoning provide. And number 6 is essentially making it possible for small, even temporary projects to start building momentum. If that's maybe we don't get somebody to develop this empty lot right away, but we clean up the pavement and we get a couple small prefab buildings and let people run, 200 square foot shops out of there, or try to sell hot chocolate or craft, or provide small incremental things to start moving towards a more vibrant downtown, instead of just relying on the mega projects like the Allens Block, which are only few people and parties can really participate at that scale. Building on civic assets, the first recommendation here is that we need to evaluate the use of the Carnegie Library and the Memorial Hall, which is currently the senior center, to make sure that the uses and the future of those buildings are the best they can be to activate and create vibrancy downtown. Right now, the senior center does drive a lot of traffic for meals and for classes. The Carnegie Library doesn't drive a lot of traffic and isn't able to be open to the public much of the time. And there are facility and building things happening in the city in regard related to a lot of different projects that may open up opportunities for evaluating the location of the functions that are in those buildings and determining what the right thing would be for them. They actually recommend specifically that the Carnegie Library serve as some type of active space, whether that's a cafe or restaurant, that we potentially evaluate locating kind of a joint office of like the chamber or a downtown association and our economic development functions in that building, possibly. They really just recommend that we very intentionally evaluate the use of those buildings, since they are public assets, and we want to make sure that they're providing the best return in creating a vibrant downtown and serving our citizens. 2 is a Center Street Market, which really builds on the I'll skip down to this page. Sorry. Builds on the idea of a Center Street Festival Street. The city owns the property in between the Bodie's Garage and Snelson's photo. And the plan recommends evaluating that site for the location of a permanent market structure of some sort, and facilitating, as we move into the future, connecting this area of the creek to the Civic Center and to downtown more seamlessly.
How does Nelson and Bodie's feel about?
Well, Mike's mentioned that he'd be happy to have someone come in and pay for his retirement by doing something else with that building. But I don't know that the city's going to come in and buy Snelson Photo and turn it into something. But
Where would they park?
this is just very diagrammatic. We're not going to plow over their parking lot.
Yeah,
They do own their own parking.
they own, that's fine.
We own the gravel lot.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome space, though.
It is.
I mean, it is like crazy nice. You got the creek right there, and
There's a lot of possibilities.
that's huge possibilities there. So
I love having everyday services like an auto garage downtown, and this is a great business, but I also, my kind of Park Slope, millennial, Brooklynite looks at that and says that could be a really cool restaurant with a creekside dining patio, and you can go downstairs into the old auto body shop and have a special dining room like Maggleby's has downstairs, and have really nice river frontage all the way from 100 West all the way up to Main Street.
That would be cool. I like Bodie's.
Just do auto parts on the top and restaurant on the bottom.
Yeah, there you go. Mixed use.
Yeah.
3 is connecting the museum and Main Street, and this is something that our public arts and Main Street and museum is already working on, to create an art walk that would connect the museum with Main Street, really going down 2nd East and down the 100 South River Promenade, which I'll show you. That's another strategy, and really building some synergy between those destinations that kind of feel separate right now. But between the museum and the library, we have so much visitation downtown that we just need to capture and make them feel interested in and comfortable exploring more of downtown when they come to those destinations. And that brings us to the catalytic site at the Springville Library, which is one I have to disclaim before I go to it. This graphic you're about to see and have seen, as you've looked at the package, is purely conceptual, saying that we could do something with this corner. It is not recommending any specific intervention, but that we need to, like it says, it's strategically located in the civic core, and it could become a vibrant public space with public and private uses. So this is the drawing that this large surface parking lot here, that's part of the library, could be adapted while preserving the necessary parking for the library to really draw people from the library into downtown and activate what really is a half block of just dead space in downtown right now by
That's on the south side of the library.
south side of the library. Correct.
Yeah, those definitely utilized as parking.
Yes, the parking is a valuable function, and we wouldn't. This doesn't. That's what some people have caught on with this image. Oh, where'd the parking lot go? We obviously maintain the parking some way structured or subgrade, and it may. We've talked about how, what if we just set up some small shops along just the south border of it, adjacent. We've got a big, large landscaped area there that we could do booths or something on, just as kind of a pilot project, but that we need to strategically evaluate this really great asset we have here in downtown and see what the future could hold for it. And that rolls right into the last element in this build on civic asset section, and that's the 100 South Promenade, which we've also already made progress on. We've closed 100 South, the westbound leg of that from 100 East to 200 East to vehicular traffic.
Something to do with it maybe collapsing with flood.
And
water.
then the river subsequently removed a third of the road, making the project somewhat more expensive, which is why it hasn't happened. Our total project budget is now constitutes what we estimate to be a third of the budget of just restabilizing the bank there. So we're looking for other funding to move that forward, but we anticipate that this would essentially be a promenade that would go from Main Street, evaluate if we continue to need 2 directions of travel on 100 South and between First West and Main Street, and connect that all the way through to 2nd East to the rest of the art walk. And then the active transportation plan calls out 100 South as a neighborhood greenway running all the way to 4th East to a new crossing with a 100 South by Grant School, and then that takes you all the way up to the east side comfortably.
Seems like traffic is low enough in that area that could work great.
And then the last set of recommendations is leaning into Art City. That first, we need to integrate art into Springville even more. We have a lot of kind of living room scale bronzes sitting on podiums downtown, which I love. But we need to kind of take the next step, and we're already doing that in the downtown. We're working on, and I think it may happen, I'm not sure. I've heard that it could start as part of the art festival this weekend, but I haven't heard anything subsequently on our first downtown building mural, and evaluating additional sites for those in the future. The Allens Block is, as part of the requirements under the zone, is installing public art, and they're working with our public art team to combine resources on those to make some really great installations.
Putting a bean downtown or something.
Yeah, if you have $30 million and you know Anush Kapoor's phone number, I'd love that.
Just put a cow instead.
Maybe we can polish a much smaller piece of stainless steel. The
I know a guy that can make them,
nice.
small ones.
Dangling from all the
Again, defining the art walk, improving the Rivoli Theater. We've sold the theater.
What is the latest there?
We've sold it at the beginning of this year. That deal, that lease to own deal, did close,
Oh, did.
and so Melissa and Brad Johnson own the theater and are working on capital plans to improve the facility and programming plans. They have some fun things going in there at the moment. They've had kind of one-off events occasionally, and they have a longer-term user in there that's actually almost done installing a large video wall on the back of the stage to facilitate their activities. And they're going to be doing a film screening as part of the Arts Festival this coming Saturday, this weekend. I think there's some Sundance films from this year and a couple other local filmmaker stuff. And the last two are basically that we need to focus strategically on art and culinary focused retail, really lean into that, and do the same thing with programs and events. And we've made a lot of progress with that in the last couple of years with the art festival, with
Hey,
And this
Josh.
year,
Yeah.
with it expanding into the neighborhoods.
Yep.
That's really exciting.
I agree. Hey, Josh.
Mhm.
We've talked a lot about removing parking areas tonight, and I know that one big piece is making sure we have parkings, but as we continue to do this, I hope we're not just continuing to put that on the back burner. That needs to be a major part
Right.
of the strategy up front, and not, we'll figure that out later.
we're definitely not going to go build a building on the library parking lot and hope for the best. And really the only parking we've recommended removing throughout this whole plan would be to do something different with the piece next to Snelson's that we've used temporarily for parking during Art City Days. But really, that strategy number 4 in the two not through is that we need to take a holistic look at parking and figure out how to make it work better. So that's really I just wanted to get through those implementation recommendations with you because they're really the meat of the plan. And then the copies you've received have all of the detailed steps for all of those, the timelines, the $ level cost estimates, and then all of the backup data. We had a really good traffic analysis, economic analysis done for this plan that showed us how much traffic that comes in the north of town really leaves out the south of town. So that really is my presentation. If you have additional specific questions or you don't have anywhere else to be, I'm happy to continue talking about it.
indefinitely.
Yeah, that's
Are there questions for Mr. Yost before we open the public hearing?
good job to you and the team, Josh.
Yeah.
They've been great to work with on this. It's been a good plan.
Yeah,
Or good, been a good
really,
process.
really exciting, and I hope it comes to fruition the way we hope it does.
I hope you're all ready to open your boutique downtown in the next couple of years.
You respond well to pressure too, so you're
Oh.
doing great, so.
Okay, thanks. Then I'll take a seat.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion for the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is now open for this item. We invite anyone who would like to come forward and address the commission. We just ask that you state your name and your address for the record.
I guess I'm up. Trying to watch the clock there. My name is Alicia Mortensen, and I live at 1111 East Center. And grew up in a rural town, and then I've also lived in Provo. Not when I went to school, but also for 10 years after that. And so that's something I want us to keep in mind. And I've also lived in Maryland and Florida and North Carolina and seen a bunch of different places and ways of doing things. And like when we're looking at the development and looking at the 1 and 2 bedroom apartment housing and yes, we need to do something with that area, but just keep in mind, what do we want this town to become? If I wanted Provo, I would have moved to Provo. I moved to Springville because I like the feel of Springville. And that's despite the fact that growing up, Springville was known as being stuck up. Okay, sorry, they had a bad rep as being really stuck up, so I didn't want to move here. And then I'm like, oh, actually, they're not too bad. Okay. But what do we want the town to be? Do we want to be another Provo? You know, what's the point of providing all these 1 and 2 bedroom houses? I like the fact that it's a family community, you know? So do we need a lot of 1 and 2 bedroom places? I know a lot of them are good for starting families, but you know, maybe more 2 bedroom than 1 bedroom. Just kind of focus on that is one thing. Another thing is something that was mentioned in the thing, and I don't know how much we mentioned it here, was just talking about changing the bus route to go through downtown. And it was just kind of mentioned in passing in the thing, I think. But I don't, right now, my husband sometimes takes the bus to work at UVU. And it's a 7-block walk. And if it were to change to Main Street, that's an 11-block walk. And a lot of times what he'll do is he will drive down and park at a church that's by one of the stops, hop on the bus and take it. If that's moved to Main Street, there's already not enough parking on Main Street. Moving the bus to that route, I don't think is really a good viable option, at least not until we provide more parking. And I think that brings me to my next point is we need to provide more parking, and I think that needs to be one of the main priorities of this renovating downtown, because I did live in Provo. I didn't shop on Center Street. Why didn't I shop on Center Street? Because the parking was horrible. It's a pain to get in. It's a pain to get out of. There's not enough behind it. I would rather go to Spanish Fork and park on Main Street, or park there. Why? Because they've got parking behind that I can get to, and I know I can get to, and there's generally enough of it. So I think we need to focus on parking. Also, just when we're doing this and talking about this, keep in mind that, yeah, people are willing to walk a block to get to wherever. But think of how far they do need to walk to get to the businesses, to get to the different things. How far are they going to walk? I saw the average age in town is listed as something like 28. But if that's counting all the kids, what we really need to know is what's the average age of the people that are going to be driving to downtown and actually to be utilizing it, or walking to downtown and utilizing it. You know, if that's 40, if that's 50, I know at 50 I'm a lot less likely to walk as far as I was at 20, right? I'm a lot more willing to walk when I was younger than I am when I'm older. And so those are things I think we just need to keep in mind with this plan that maybe haven't been fully realized. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be quick. Melissa Brooks, 615 South Canyon Drive. I just wanted to suggest that maybe Springville City invest in the Allen's parking lot along with that developer and underground parking and make it a public space that the city invests in, or maybe somewhere else that's underground instead of going maybe up so high. Also, there's a credit union on the opposite side of the parking lot of the library, but maybe you could look in and using that for some of the parking as well. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Hunter Huffman, 154 C Street. I guess just the general thought of the reframing downtown is I would just try to take into account the end user and who lives in Springville rather than how they're getting around. We live on the earth, the cars don't. It's kind of this switch in a paradigm, I think, especially Western society, we got to kind of deal with. And that's where the active transportation plan is great in trying to provide different ways for people to get around. I just think whether it's parking, whether it's the street design that Josh had mentioned, a lot of it is trying to, at least I think the intent and who he's worked with, the intent is to focus on the end user and the person rather than the vehicle who could crush the person very easily. Where a lot of those comments of width of parking and things like that have been taken into account. But That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Rock. I live at 2470 Goodnight Drive, and I'm just super excited. I'm super excited about all this. It looks really cool, and I just all these things are really exciting. It's a great time, I think, to be a Springville resident. And so, yeah, and my wife and I are driving to Provo all the time because they got this great area to go. They have places to go. And yeah, we'll park 6 or 7 blocks away and walk to where we're going, but we'll do it happily. And I'd much rather spend my money in my city than have to drive to Provo and do that. So I'm really excited about all the cool stuff that's coming up. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Logan Millsap. I'm at 133 South, 880 East. And I'll echo that same excitement. I'm very excited that we can kind of revitalize our downtown, kind of reimagine how we're using our public space and how we might want to rethink the way we develop. And it's exciting not just because like, oh, these are new ideas. What's exciting about it is a lot of these are old ideas. This is what gave us the historic, beautiful downtown, those buildings that we love. They came about before we instituted a lot of the well-intentioned planning methods that we are currently sometimes kind of trying to figure out the details on now. So I'm excited that we can kind of get back to Springville's historic roots, and maybe that will create a more vibrant downtown like we had in 1895. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
First, I have to ask a question because I'm a stakeholder, Grace Bible Church on Main Street, but I don't actually live in Springville. Am I allowed to comment?
Anybody and everybody's allowed to.
Okay.
And welcome.
Well, I love Springville. Actually, I do look at houses to buy here all the time. But yeah, I'm with the church. My husband's the pastor at Grace Bible Church, and just a couple comments.
Could you state your name and address?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank
Laura Erickson, 239 South Main Street is the church address. Anyway, a couple comments I wanted to make is I think one thing is if we don't build it, they won't come. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
So, because you were like, if we build it, will they come? But if we don't build it, I think that's pretty sure they won't come. So it's like you have to think that through. What do we want to do? I love Springville. I love this city. I think it's just so incredibly charming. The first time I came here was 4 years ago, and I'm like, this is a gem of a city. It's Art City. This is amazing. And I thought this Main Street is so awesome. And it could even be more awesome. And so I love the vision of the downtown. It's of making it the historic and the vintage and the supporting the small businesses. So thank you, Josh, and your team. I really like that. I'm excited. I do go down to Provo Center Street. I love that. I'll walk a few blocks to get where I need to go. I was even there, was it Friday night or Saturday night? It was packed. I guess it was homecoming. And so I had to drive a couple things, but I did find parking, and it was packed. But I did find parking, and we went to an eatery. But I would, just the charm of, anyways, I just really encourage the city. I hope to get a house here at some time, but I'm here every day because I'm over at the church doing stuff. So anyways, I love this vision. I just really applaud you guys, your efforts, and I'm sure it'll be a long, project and stuff, but our church, we want to do everything to bring life to the city as well. So however way we can support the city, we're going to do that. And I try to keep our sidewalk really clean and stuff like that. So we'll continue to try to improve our building too. So Josh helped us with that. So I really thank you, Josh, for helping with getting our new sign and stuff and telling me that there was historic tile underneath there. And, so we got that scraped, So anyway, thank you. So anyway,
And
that's all.
thank you, by the way, for all the good that Grace Bible Church does in the community. You guys do a lot of great stuff, so thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh, good. You're the last one who hadn't come up. I was wondering if you were going to.
Mindy Wright, 853 East, 1000 South. So I just want to say that it all needs to start with a plan, and I feel like this is a great plan. It gets us started. It might not have all the details filled in, but it gives us a way to move forward. And I feel like there are a lot of positives within the plan, and I feel like definitely I don't think we've had something like this before that's so detailed and so well studied that is something that we can start to act on. So I think it's a great plan. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Well, I think that accounts for everyone in the audience. Do we have a motion for the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, what kind of feedback, or do we have any direction that anyone would like to bring up? Are we all just enthralled with the immensity of the 143 pages of planning that we got to
I think it's
review?
a great starting point, Josh. I think you've done a great job, and we just need to build on it and make it work for our city. So we have to start somewhere if we want to change. So I think you guys have done a wonderful job.
I like the vision, and this has a lot of vision to it, and I like that we've got some vision and a direction and not just kind of hoping that something will happen.
I like the amount of time that's been put into building this plan and the feedback and the community involvement that they, done and tried to get in so that it does feel like it is a plan made for the community.
I mean, there's gonna have to be a fundamental shift in our businesses in downtown to make this what you have envisioned or everyone's envisioning. So,
More interactive.
Yeah.
I agree, and I do think that the parking will be part of that success because anyone that's gonna build a business is gonna have to be able to count on traffic, and that's what it is, so.
Oh, yeah, totally agree. I mean, you have to have a reasonable parking situation in order
Yeah.
for it to be a viable plan. Okay. Any considerations to bring up before we move on this item, as far as we didn't feel like we had enough information about something, or?
the only question I have is on the Allen's block. When do you think that'll come back up? How long do you think that'll take to get some of the answers from the developers?
Quickly, next meeting or two.
Well, I would make a motion to recommend to adopt the reframing downtown and downtown Main Street plan.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously, and thank you to everyone who came tonight and sat through. It's been 2 hours of 2 very long presentations full of information, so we're glad you came. We're glad that you provided some feedback. That's not something we see at every meeting, so we're excited when it does happen. Right? Yes, everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm speaking for
Yes.
everybody, saying we're all excited, but, okay, that concludes everything on the agenda. Do we have anything from staff before we adjourn?
Just that we hope to see everyone who's indicated they'll be coming to the training next Wednesday at Santa Quinn's New City Hall.
That's right. If you've forgotten to put that on your calendar, please check your emails for location and times and
5:30.
those things.
5:30, yeah. It's an earlier
Yeah.
start than we're used to.
But it's got dinner.
Yeah, that's right.
That works. Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to close the meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.